Welcome to a special edition of Who Touched the Thermostat. We'll see how this works. It's a little breezy out here in Southwest Florida on this wonderful Friday night. We'll see what the audio picks up like. I'm not even sure. With all the loud trucks that may be rolling through here, it's wild. But see if anybody hops on here. A couple people may pop in, pop out. We'll just see what goes on. A little impromptu, little deal. Obviously, this whole week, I feel like the whole nation has been kind of on the edge of its seat, waiting for the verdict to drop on the Rittenhouse case. And the Rittenhouse case has really brought forth a bunch of questions for us to kind of take a second and take a look at, and really decide, what's important going forward. And I'm extremely happy with the verdict. I'm super thankful that it actually came down to a jury decision versus, a mistrial with prejudice or any of that kind of stuff. Because I feel like those options would have led to a bunch of speculation and kind of making the overall impact of the case kind of wishy-washy. And I'm glad that it was a verdict handed down by the jury, because that is much more impactful than some loophole type situation that we may have been looking at. So, I'm very happy with the verdict, and I think it's very important for all of us, not just Kyle in the situation, that self-defense is not a question and shouldn't be. But it was obviously weighing in the balance that potentially it could be found that self-defense is much more narrow than what it actually is. So, looking at the case, following along, I watched a majority of the hearing as much as I could in between doing, my own business, taking care of my stuff, but trying to pay attention as much as I could to be able to see all the evidence and see, all the different people that came forward in the court to give their testimony and to give their input to the case. And more, it proved that what we already knew was self-defense was in fact self-defense and nothing but that. And obviously people are going to argue and try to make their pleas and everything, but they're not based in fact. They're not going to come to you and say that they've watched the whole case, that they've watched the video. I know a lot of people out there that are the same mindset as me, that this should have never even been in the court to begin with, because let's be honest, I mean, it was cut and dry freaking self-defense case. Kid didn't go there with the intent of killing anybody, and obviously he spent hours throughout the night armed with his AR and didn't hurt nobody, didn't threaten nobody, and there's no video of that. There's video from all over the night. There's nothing that indicates that this kid was going around and flaunting and threatening people. So I think it's very clear to people that saw it from the get-go that it was self-defense. But now there is no question it was self-defense. The verdict saw through the jury to determine that they, in fact, determined through all of the testimony and everything that, in fact, it was self-defense. Now, a few things that have come across my mind watching the case unfold is that a lot of people have a weird view of what you're allowed to do, and I think it is kind of a poisoning of the well that it's happened over several decades of us trusting solely in the the law enforcement community and the government to quote unquote protect us. Now, people that I associate with laugh and scoff at that all day long because we know that at the end of the day, these people are doing their quote unquote job, and most of the time it doesn't. No, you and I don't matter. Our rights don't matter. The things that we go through day to day aren't at the forefront of their radar of what they care about or what they're doing. Okay, so now we look at it and see that there are certain situations, regardless if you're as libertarian as I am or um, just interested in the ideas of liberty, like you have to be able to understand that we are the end all be all for our protection. And whenever I say our protection, that's me, that's my family, that's my neighbors, that's my town, that's my city, that's my county, that's my state, whatever. Okay? We have a duty to protect. And just as much as people run around and say, Kyle shouldn't have been there, who should have been there? Somebody should have, because those buildings should have never been burned. Those companies, those businesses, regardless if they had insurance or not, or whatever these people try to make excuses for, people should be protecting what they built. Whether that is your business or your friend's business, or your cousin's business, or the guy down the street, this is your community. This is part of your extended family. Okay? So whenever people make these excuses and make these, you know, these these decisions that people shouldn't be there, they shouldn't be defending property or whatever. When does it stop? Who stops it? Because if the cops stand down by orders from their chief or from the mayor or from from speculation outside of federal level or whatever it is, whoever is telling these people to to back off or to stand down, it doesn't. Those people are going to do what they're going to do, but at the end of the day, those businesses and people that are living in those areas or wherever are at risk. So I think it's a damn due time that we, as citizens, stand together. And this doesn't have to do with race or none of that garbage. It has to do with the fact that we are protecting peaceful people. We want to remain peaceful and find peaceful solutions. And sometimes that requires us to stand up and be ready to fight evil forces and people that want to provoke us from being peaceful. Now, obviously, there's a lot of a lot of opinions and a lot of things that are going on, but we cannot bow down at this point. It's very important that we maintain our firmness and stay steadfast in the fight for liberty and freedom, and to continue pushing on to expand that liberty, freedom, justice for all, and make sure that we aren't giving up a single inch to these folks that want to keep us from going and doing our normal daily things, whether that's through the vaccine mandates or that's through way of causing riots and things of that nature to prevent us from operating normally. Okay, and there, sometime the buck has to stop, and we have to decide who and when is going to be there. And the hard question is when is it my time? When is it my time to stand up to stop this nonsense? Give me just a second. I'm going to try to get one of the guests to pop in here. Take me just a second. Let's see. I'm back. Sorry about that. And all right. Hey, buddy.
You there?
Yeah, I'm here. You hear me?
Hold on. Let me turn my Bluetooth on. Can't hear ya.
You hear me now?
Hold on.
Technical
I can't
difficulties.
hear ya. You there?
Yep, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Damn it. Still can't hear ya. I don't know why.
Hey, can
You
somebody
hear
in the
me okay?
chat? I see there's a couple people there. Yeah, I can hear you just fine. So there's a couple people watching. Somebody in the chat, let me know if there's if you can hear both of us or hear just one of us. I think everything's cool on my side. I don't see.
About now.
Yeah, I'm good. I can hear you.
Okay.
You're fine.
Okay.
You can hear me now?
Okay.
All
Yeah,
right,
I can hear
cool.
ya.
Anyway,
For
so
some reason, when
I was just kind of.
I plug my mic in, let's see. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
Okay. Yeah, I'll just do it this way then.
All right, good deal. All right, so Sterling, welcome back to the back to the channel for second week around. Seems like
Oh
you're
yeah.
still out doing dirty work.
Yeah, I'm out here in Reno actually. Fucking
Oh, nice.
yeah. Doing. I was actually running an excavator today while I was hearing about the Kyle Rittenhouse verdict. So
Well,
it's good
isn't that
times.
a wild way to hear about it? Yeah. So I was just
Yeah,
kind of
dude,
I was
I had
kind
to
of touching
stop.
base on just talking about uh, now that it's come down to the fact that it's solidified that he was in self defense and it wasn't wasn't brought down by the determination of the judge. It came down by the fact of the actual jury making making the decision to give him a clear clear go at it and say not guilty on all charges, and how that impacts the effect of the case as a whole. And now it kind of enters into the area that you and I have talked about in regards to you know when do we decide that that it's time for all of us to step up,
Yeah,
because I just before I got on the live, I was talking to a friend of mine and we were kind of going back and forth about um, the nature of Rittenhouse and him being there, and whether some people disagree that he should have been there in the first place, which you and I have talked
yeah,
in length about the fact that,
yeah,
hey, 17-year-old kid, yeah, maybe he shouldn't have been there, but no,
yeah,
who else was there?
yeah. Exactly.
So
It's like if that's the army you got to go to war with, because you don't have anybody else that's willing to step up, then the
you
last
got to work
person we
with
should be
what you got,
blaming is the guy who's actually out there.
right? And so with that, obviously, would it be great if there was a whole bunch of people that had prior experience, beyond what Kyle had, to be able to, handle, large groups of people that, potentially could be violent and stuff? Of course, yes. Obviously, the more
Yeah,
training you have, the better. But when it comes down to it, you know, the kid did a damn good job. Out of 30 rounds, he spent 8 of them, and he didn't ever
I
take an
think so.
ill-advised shot, in my opinion.
I
I
think
mean,
so.
he did a damn
You
good
know, I
job.
mean, I don't even think this should have gone to a trial. He should have never been arrested. Because to me it was so clear cut. You know, and I'm a gun guy and all this sort of stuff, and you know, I've been in this atmosphere for a long time. And I mean, you know, someone was talking the other day. They were like, you know, this almost proves that training's overrated because this kid handled himself so well.
Yeah.
You know, in an extremely dynamic situation with multiple attackers. You know, not all of them posing a lethal threat to him. And I mean, my God, dude, the guy was, you know, 2.5 for 3.
Right.
You know,
And
so
and I
you
had
know,
mentioned
like
that to
of all
you.
the people, I'm gonna get out and walk for a second. I'm gonna go
Oh,
grab a
you're fine.
light so you can actually see me. But I'll keep talking to you. But
Yeah, so we kind of talked about that because I'd made a joke, that I was like, you know what, this whole Rittenhouse situation has kind of made me second guess uh, the amount of training necessary, which obviously I 100% believe in practice makes perfect, and trying to improve yourself and improve under
yeah,
the circumstances of duress to be able to operate at a superior level. Um,
yeah,
and
absolutely.
with the Rittenhouse case, um, let me see something over there. With the Rittenhouse case, he made a whole bunch of decisions in such a short period of time that I don't think
Yeah,
people really appreciate the
no,
fact that most people, whenever you go through any kind of firearms training, whether that is just your normal carry conceal, basic stuff, or
yeah,
getting into a position of doing like combat training or running field
mm-hmm,
training with a militia group or whatever. He made
mm-hmm.
excellent decisions, and he
Yes,
stopped
he did.
firing whenever the threat ended. And
Yep,
people that are
yep.
anti-gun, they're
You
just
saw
like,
that with the
guns are all bad.
gauge girls. Yeah. Well, those people are those people are arguing out of bad faith. They don't really care about the facts of anything. They're just
Yeah,
uh, you know, trying to use it as an excuse to further their own agenda, which is anti-gun, anti-self-defense. You know,
right.
I mean, the thing that the thing that terrifies these people the most right now about this case is the fact that if what Kyle Rittenhouse did was illegal, or was legal, I should say, um, then it's legal to defend yourself against rioters.
Right.
And
Yep.
you know, it's funny. It's funny that I've been on Twitter the last few days, looking at people reacting to this and talking about the implications of it, and the left is by and large correct in that, he's going to set a precedent for and they're going to frame it as, he's a white supremacist and just gunning down people for no reason at all. But they're right in the fact that it is going to set a precedent that you're going to be very free to fuck around and find out now.
Right.
You know, you
Yeah.
want to go around
And
burning and attacking people, doing all this stuff, you have a much higher probability of finding out now.
exactly. And the thing is that, you know, for folks like myself and I mean, we're unashamed libertarians, and with
Mm-hmm.
that being said, we do believe in the non-aggression principle. So we definitely believe that you shouldn't go out of your way to start problems, and you shouldn't you shouldn't instigate issues, and you shouldn't instigate force. But whenever your community is at dire risk of being burned down and threatened by fire bombs and stuff like that right there is enough to violate the NAP principle, from
Yeah,
that aspect.
it
So now
absolutely is.
you're 100% ready to engage and be justified, because
Hmm.
I was listening to that Drew Hernandez guy that had testified in the case, and he had made a quote, or had talked about some of these riots that he'd been to. It may have been Kenosha, it may have been some other ones, but he said that it wasn't uncommon for him to come across boarded up buildings that had spray paint on the boards that said "Kids live here."
Yeah,
And I'm sitting here looking at it from my position, like, if I knew that a threat was present for children,
hmm
100% it's time to stand up. It's time to go forward and
yeah,
and stand in front of these people and say, no, not today. You're not coming. But now, like you said, it does say, hey, guess what? Now, if you do want if you do want to fuck around and
yeah,
find out, there's going to be
hmm
somebody on the find out stage. So, and
yeah.
I
And so
I've been preaching it to
the
people.
verdict is obviously, a huge victory for that. But I think there's something else that's been going on, and you, me, and a handful of others. I don't want to put myself or any of us out there as like, oh, we were first and da da da. But
Right. No, no,
you,
no.
me, and
Yeah.
a handful of others since the beginning have been like just completely pushing back on this fucking cockamamie idea of like, oh, he shouldn't have been there. He shouldn't have been there. He was stupid. Nah, nah, nah. And a lot of this came from conservatives too, and
Yeah.
libertarians,
Yeah.
you know. But you, me, and a handful of others never bought into that.
No,
Our
because it doesn't
position was
make
always
sense.
like, you should have been there, motherfucker.
Right. Yeah,
Are you in
because
your 20s, your 30s, your 40s? You got a little training, got some grunt style shirts on you? Get out there, or you're a bitch. Like
it,
I'm sorry, but it's like, it's like you know, there's grandmothers and disabled people and maybe just people who don't know how to use guns and aren't built for physical violence. It's like they can't defend themselves. And so just sitting in your house and saying, well, the bricks aren't flying through my windows. It's like, dude, you're a
right,
bitch. You're worthless.
dude.
You are
And
falling
being a
down on your most like basic obligation as a fucking man.
and
But I
being
think that's catching
peaceful,
on.
being peaceful is a positive thing, and we both can
Hmm.
agree on that. Obviously, we want to
Yes,
look for any
absolutely.
peaceful opportunity to get to our means, right? But
Yeah,
beyond
absolutely.
that, that does not apply to evil people that want to do destruction and want to do harm on people. So the only
Yeah.
remedy for that is to have a protection, a security of folks that say, no, not here, not now. And
Hmm.
we've seen it in some of the smaller
Hmm.
towns where some of these riots tried to expand, and then they get met with force. They get met with 15, 20 guys that are in full battle rattle, AR-15s, AK-47 strapped, and says, you're not coming in my neighborhood. You're not going to burn down my house, my neighbor's house, and you're not going to come in here and cause destruction and mayhem. It's not going to happen. And guess
Hmm.
what? Those people turn around and say, nope, not here. And that's how
Yeah.
it should be. I don't want
Yeah.
violence. I don't
It's
want
exactly
people to
how it should be,
die.
and there's no excuse for it not being that way everywhere.
Exactly.
None.
So, and just because and the Rittenhouse case proved this, just because you have a rifle doesn't mean that you are a combatant or a person of violence, okay? That means that you understand your right to self-preservation and defense, and so therefore you are taking it upon yourself from a constitutional standpoint and from a human standpoint to preserve your life. Now,
Hmm.
when it comes down
Yep.
to it,
That's 100% correct. And you know, the crazy part is like, how long have we been talking about this? Like, since before Kyle Rittenhouse. Since,
right.
You know.
Yeah.
But
Dude.
I just want to say, I think it's a good thing that it's starting to catch on. You know, I've actually seen some big names and some, you know, even Tucker Carlson mentioned this on a show, and now he kind of couched it in like, well, if the police don't do their job, a 17-year-old will, you know, whereas like that's close, but not exactly like what we've been saying, but it's pretty fucking close.
It's pretty,
you know, where it's like, look,
mainstream.
If you're not going to do your job, someone's going to do your job for you. And if it's a 17-year-old, more's the shame on you for being 25, full of piss and vinegar, and sitting on your couch. Because, I mean, how many people like that do you think were in Kenosha at that time? 20,000? 30,000? You know, but
not even just
it's
in Kenosha,
catching on.
but in the,
because
in the general area.
I think like once it gets out there that like, hey, instead of just saying you shouldn't have been there, what if we had been there? You know,
right?
But like once you broach that, it's kind of tough to put that back in the bottle where you're like, well, no, I mean, because I had to work the next day, you know, like you're just gonna sound like a bitch, and you know, it's really gonna put pressure on people to fucking like not be bitches.
Right.
But
no, it definitely
I'll say this,
and,
like,
and now that Go ahead. Finish your.
No, I'm just gonna say, like, another great part about this is, you know, Kyle Rittenhouse is now acquitted, and this dude's already beaten back offers. Gun Owners of America just announced they're going to give him a free AR-15.
Nice.
And I guarantee you there's going to be other good gun companies and advocacy groups and whatever. Like, this kid's probably going to need another house to store all his new AR-15s and ammo, and possibly body armor and panoramic night vision, and God knows what else is going to get sent to him. But the great thing about that is, you know, going back to like talking about leftists being afraid of what the verdict's going to do. Think about what all the, like, if that kid starts up an Instagram account tomorrow, how many likes and follows do you think he's going to have instantly?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Millions?
Game over. Yeah.
So that's the other thing that's going to hopefully incentivize libertarians, conservatives, and just good, you know, centrists, even if they don't like watching burning or their communities burn. It's going to incentivize them to get out there and stop being pussies, is the fact that, like, oh my God, like, you can do the right thing and get massively rewarded for it. Not just like escape prosecution, but like get a bunch of free shit and a whole bunch of followers on your social media.
Heck yeah.
Like,
I mean,
and like, it sounds silly. It sounds silly, but it's like, you think that doesn't drive people? You know it does.
Absolutely. Yeah. But, you know, and the thing is, man,
like,
is that, like,
for 20 million Twitter followers, come on.
Yeah. But
I'd shoot a skateboarder.
We make heroes out of people all the time for the most random stuff. Okay. And, you know, people can nitpick the case the whole time. They can nitpick Kyle the whole time. And, you know, I will say this, that, I mean, it's come up in conversation that, you know, historically, the conservatives, the right, have made heroes out of people that have eventually done something stupid. So I had said earlier that the quicker that good people can surround that kid and give him some really good insight and some really good information, the better, because we don't want him, no pun intended, we don't want him shooting himself in the foot. You know, because he is a kid. He's 18, with that. You know? And so, like, he can definitely make decisions that down the road, obviously, the media is already, I mean, MSNBC's chasing down the jury bus. Like, come on now. Like, They
Hmm.
do you
Well,
not
and
think
yeah,
that
I
he's
mean,
going to be under a crazy microscope from here going forward, at least for the next
yeah.
few years? But if we
Well,
surround him with good
yeah,
people, he'll be in
and
such
that's even if
much
you
better shape.
look as yeah, yeah. No, it's true, and it's like, and that's true. Even if you look past leftists and look at like all the right wingers and quote unquote well wishers, all the incentives they're going to have to reach out to that kid and give him stuff and da da da, so that they can get likes and business, and you know
Right.
it's no different than being like a LeBron James or a Justin Bieber, where you're going to be very young and suddenly you're going to be thrust into like all this opportunity, and it's probably going to be tough for him to get through that unless he has got some really good people around him, um, without accidentally falling for someone who seems like they have his best interest in mind,
Right.
and all they want is for him to be a figurehead for them and whatever the fuck they're doing. Like I saw, I don't know, he's like some congressman or something by the name of McCarthy, who offered him an internship,
I
and
think
it's like,
Matt Gates offered
that's
him
what
an
I'm talking about.
internship. Yeah, and I think I seen that, and I think I seen somebody made a rumor that Rand Paul, which if I had the decision of if I was the person who made the decision, said between Matt Gates and Rand Paul, like obviously I'm telling him to go Rand,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
um, I don't like
Gates is a little nutty.
obviously. Well, even beyond that, man, like I'm just kind of done with. I'm even the people that I I like Rand. Rand doesn't make all the decisions that I want him to make, whatever.
Yeah,
But politicians, Kyle. If you catch wind of this, stay the hell away from
yeah,
politicians. Like
yeah,
unless it's Spike Cohen or Larry Sharp or somebody, like stay away from
yeah,
politicians because they're just going to corrupt your
yeah,
brain. And
yeah.
I mean, like I said, I can respect Rand for his situations, but I've seen him talk to people like Shane Hazel and grovel and beg for the for Shane to become a Republican and stuff. And it's like, look, dude, like no, like just leave it alone. Like we can still be together in unity for liberty and not have to
Yeah,
play the games and bow down to the system. So,
yeah,
I really hope that Kyle gets better offers than that to be around
yeah.
more
Or
interesting
or at
people.
least has the guidance around him to help him navigate through the bad offers to get to the good
Right.
ones. Because I mean, dude, the
Yeah.
kid's 18, man. Like you know, I
I
mean,
mean,
a
he's
fucking
got his whole
22
life
year old.
ahead of him. So,
Yeah,
I
I'm
mean,
just saying, like a 22-year-old running back coming out of college who's highly touted. That guy doesn't really have the tools to deal with what he's going to deal with going into the NFL, let alone what this kid's
no.
got to deal with now. You know?
Right. No, and this is a whole different level. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't
Because I
know.
mean,
I mean,
he's
I'm
already a right wing icon.
right.
So like,
Yeah.
there's going to be all kinds of names that are just going to be scrambling for this kid.
Yep.
You know, I heard Tucker's going to have him on Monday, so that'll be interesting to see. But
Yeah. I mean, I'm
yeah,
kind
no,
of
I feel you on that. Like, I hope he doesn't become like, you know, I don't know, some kind of idiot like what's his name, Dakota Meyer, that dude that won the Medal
bro.
of Honor, and now he's like a spokesman for
So
BAE System, and dude's just
why
cool.
since you brought that up, um, a couple things on that. So last week, whenever I had you on, we had talked about Black Rifle Coffee, and you
Hmm.
were talking about Evan Hafer, and I'm not 100% sure. It seems like a call out, and it's not really meant to be that way. But you had mentioned a quote talking about LARPing and like carrying AR-15s.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think, and I'm not 100% sure, and maybe with your confidence, you could tell me if you're more confident than I am. I think that may have been a Dakota Meyer quote about
No, that
the
was actually
AR-15
Evan
and LARPing.
Hafer.
You
No,
okay?
but
All right.
Dakota Meyer did the same thing.
Okay, so they did the same. All right, cool. That's all.
He came. He was like, I think he has an Instagram or something, and he was talking about like
Yeah,
all these like fake warriors on
yeah,
Instagram,
yeah.
da da da. And so that guy's a tool in his own right. But no, Evan Hafer uh, did say that. He said that there are two kinds of AR owners, and that's professional shooters and LARPers. He said that on the Cleared Hot podcast with Andy Stump.
Okay, and I don't doubt you. I got
Yeah.
I trust you
No,
more than most.
it's the truth.
Uh,
I promise. I remember it.
but I will tell you this. So little fun story. So I know that you've seen from discussions that we've had in the past that I have random run-ins with like famous people or people that become famous or what have you. So Dakota
Oh, yeah.
Meyer, his mom lived down the street from me growing up, like
Really?
legit 4 houses down. Yeah, and so
Nice.
his mom and his dad, he lived with his dad, 45 minutes, an hour away from where I grew up. But yeah, dude, like I ran into him a couple times because he'd come over to his mom's house, obviously, and stuff. And so, whatever. I didn't really know him, or spend any kind of time with him. But whenever he, got his, whatever accommodation and stuff or whatever, and then,
Yeah, you got a
kind of
Medal of
blew
Honor.
up, he, I think it was actually my mom who had pointed out. She was like, that's so and so's son, and I was like, oh my gosh, like that's kind of crazy. But then of
That's
course
crazy.
I do remember. So you bringing that up, it kind of popped into my mind earlier today or yesterday, where I was like, maybe that was Dakota that said that.
Yeah.
Which now that you say it,
No,
it makes a
he
lot
said
of sense
something very, very similar.
that it's on the same
You know.
wavelength. But it is kind of funny
Yeah.
because like 6 degrees of separation, bro. Like I legit knew this kid down the street. But
That's
um
crazy.
but yeah, dude, like
But it's
it's
like,
just
and I don't want to like rip into the dude too bad, but it's like Kyle Rittenhouse could very well end up being sort of almost a Dakota Meyer, because Dakota Meyer is basically just a meatball who, is like all hopped up on Toby Keith and Crying Eagles and all this other stuff. And not saying like, I'm sure like, like if I had my choice of people to have with me in a gunfight, I'm sure he'd be a good one, obviously.
absolutely for
But
sure.
but
Yeah.
it's like you take him out of that and you put him in this position to start commenting on politics and all this stuff. It's like, dude, he's not.
Yeah, dude.
That's not him. Like, and he's gonna suck
Well,
at it.
I think it's very
And so I'm just
common.
hoping like I don't see that happen to Kyle Rittenhouse.
So bringing that up, well, because this show is just kind of this show isn't necessarily, it's kind of tip the hat to the self-defense win that we all favored, but
Yeah.
just kind of a snowball to wherever it goes. But so with that, I think it's very interesting that it seems that you find like 3 groups of veterans. So on one end of the spectrum, you find the vets that tend to be paper pushers, or like we ran into the other day, somebody who was like HVAC or whatever, that at one point in time had gone through a briefing on rules of engagement or whatever, but like never was issued a rifle or any of that kind of stuff. But then they speak from a place of super intelligence because they were part of the military and whatever. And those people tend to be those guys that are anti AR-15 in civilian hands, and they're the ones that are in that. I don't know if you've seen that. There's that one video, Angry Cops, the former vet dude. He does all the funny videos, but he did a video making fun of that vet ad where they're all talking about the AR-15 and how powerful and evil it is and stuff. And he's like, dude, I used to shoot off the M16 off my junk in training just to show people that's nothing to be afraid of. So you have those people. Then you have the opposite extreme that are people, and God love them, people like Dakota Meyer and Tim Kennedy and folks of this nature that are like supreme operators, the folks that are special operations, people that obviously have a very deep understanding of warfare, and how to operate firearms and different situations, yada yada.
Yeah, like they
And
did something.
but those people,
you know, they weren't just
right,
like driving around a fuel truck in Kuwait, and they're like, "Oh, I'm a
exactly. No,
combat
you're talking about
veteran."
people that have been shot at, and not just in
Yeah,
the general scope of things. It's not
even
like
if they
they're
didn't
sitting.
kill like all the Taliban, you know, they did something. Like, you know,
Right.
they were out there.
They had to defend themselves because they were up against actual gunfire, actual battle. You know, people like
Mm-hmm.
Jocko Willink and stuff. People that have stories
Yeah.
of actually engaging with the Mujahideen stuff and
Mm-hmm.
operating, like legit operating. Okay, so
Mm-hmm.
now, but the thing that disturbs me about some of those folks is that, and not to put words in anybody particular's mouth, because you know everybody's different. Tim Kennedy's different than Dakota Meyer or whoever. These different people,
Yeah.
Robert ONeill, all these really well known quote unquote operators that, you know, some will speak on the fact like it's impossible to operate without all this training that we've had, you know.
Yeah.
And obviously,
Yeah.
like we were kind of saying at the beginning whenever you jumped on, is that Kyle operated very effectively, and I would beg for any of
Mm-hmm.
those folks to critique. And of course they could nitpick the situation, but they can't say that he didn't operate within the
Yeah.
the skills that are required to handle such situation. Now,
Yeah.
then you have the middle class of folks that are kind of your average run-of-the-mill veterans, infantry folks, you know, people that have, you know, been there, done that, but maybe not, you know, maybe they're not search and rescue, or they're not, you know, SEAL Team 6. And those tend to be the folks that say, you know what, this is our homeland, and everybody has a right that's protected by the Second Amendment, and everybody should own a firearm. Everybody should go get, you know, proper training, and whether you defend your home, defend your family, defend your neighborhood, or whatever, like that is what I fought
Yeah.
for, you know. And it's
Yeah.
it's so weird to see people that went through quote, you know, similar situations come out with such vastly different opinions.
Yeah, well, I mean,
Now,
you know, I mean, you're talking about millions of people. You know, there's lots of them out there. You know, and it's like, and speaking of the first group, um, you know, when it comes to being a veteran, I think a lot of those people capitalize on sort of like civilian ignorance, where, you know, a lot of civilians think like, oh, you were in the military, and they like immediately think you were in the infantry or something. Like they think you were out,
yeah,
you know, shooting Taliban with your M16. Like they, I guess it just escapes some people that most people in the military will never fire a shot in anger, ever.
yeah,
You know, they will never see the enemy. They will never engage them. They will never be shot at. You know, and so I think a lot of civilians don't understand that, and so I think some of these military people, like this Air Force Chief Master Sergeant that we were having a discussion
yeah,
with the other day,
yeah,
that's what he does. He's like, listen, as a veteran, and he's talking about like using firearms, and this dude never used firearms. He was
yeah,
never
dude,
issued one.
yeah,
So, but it's like they do it for clout, you know, just like, you know, if you had spent like 3 days in truck driving school or something, and someone wanted to talk about trucks, and you were just kind of a piece of shit, and you wanted to like just weigh in when you had no business weighing in, you're like, listen, as a truck driver, you know, like that's what they're doing. But so
yeah,
like, and so the second group of veterans is like basically what I would call bro vets, you know, where they want to, you know, and it's not necessarily a bad thing to just want to kind of live in that like whiskey, guns, and bacon in America and you know. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but it can become bad when these people like sort of inject themselves into the political atmosphere when they're completely ignorant, you know.
yeah,
And then you know, when it comes to a guy like a Tim Kennedy and Evan Hafer, a Dakota Meyer, you know, and some of these guys who like to ride down the Second Amendment and, you know, sort of and they're always careful to not go too far. Well, not so much Evan Hafer, but they're usually careful to try and not go too far where they say like, well, it, I don't think it's a good idea, or, people shouldn't be da da da. They never quite come out and say, oh, I don't support private citizens owning AR-15s and defending themselves. But it's kind of strongly implied by a lot of things that they say that they really think that you and I are unworthy of these glorious weapons which only their skilled hands should ever touch.
Right.
Like, they actually think this.
And the thing that's crazy to me is that, I've had this argument with tons of folks, because everybody does this, wherever the gun control, topic becomes hot in the cycle, because everybody, the cycle keeps on rolling. But whenever the gun control is in the foreground of the political cycle and everything, people always do this whole like, you have a driver's license to drive a car. I'm like, if you understood how stupid that is, because it's far more difficult to learn how to safely operate a vehicle than it is to safely operate a firearm. There's literally a handful of rules for firearms, a handful.
Yeah.
And if you follow those, you're good to go. But if you get into a small front-wheel drive compact vehicle and you go from that to driving a semi-truck, like, those are two completely different beasts.
Yeah.
You can't do that. But you can easily go from a subcompact pistol like my Ruger LC that I carry. I could easily go from that to, a Glock 19 or any of the Smith and Wesson, type deals. I could run the gambit on pistols, and then I can jump into AR and be already be in that scope of like, hey, we're good to go. Like, if I keep my finger off the trigger,
you're like going
from
a Toyota Camry to an F-150. Like,
yeah, it's a huge difference. But the thing is,
I was making the point it's not that huge difference to go from like,
well, right, yeah, okay,
got a Glock. An AR is not going to be like, oh, what is this? I don't know.
But going from guns to cars, there's so much more stuff that you have to pay attention to when you're operating a vehicle versus operating a firearm. Like, it's very easy. It's very easy for somebody to make a mistake and get into an accident, whether it's just you or with other vehicles. But you almost have to go out of your way to make a mistake. Like, anybody that's like, indies happen, right? People have negligent discharges. I know plenty of people that have made mistakes, but guess what? Every one of those people say it was stupid. Like, it was so easy to avoid that mistake that I made, like, so easy. But with a car, like, there's a lot of what ifs. It's like, well, there's a lot of different.
But I mean, it's a bad faith argument to begin with, because these people, I mean, it's either bad faith or it's just they're ignorant. I mean, people who argue for gun control, if they're regular people, they're just dupes. They're, because the elites know why they want gun control.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So,
well, it's much easier to control.
That's why I'm a proud member of that third group of veterans, where I'm like, like, my oath actually kind of meant something. Like, I was one of those like weirdos who grew up with the like, hey, like, when you say some shit, like, kind of mean it, and especially when you're like swearing to it with your name and everything. But
yeah, dude, and I mean, we touched on it last week with the oath to the domestic threats, and I kind of made a widespread on the upper level of like, hey, like, whatever. There's much larger issues at hand, whether it be like the political spectrum or the enforcement spectrum on the federal level and those kinds of things. But domestic threats are just as much as the people that are burning down local businesses. Yeah. So,
but I mean, like, the FBI is going to define it differently because they have gold, and the whole idea of fairness is just a facade. I mean, it's not real, to them. It's like, they're like the mafia or a cartel where they're like, hey, how come, you fucking slit that one informant's throat and buried him in a shallow ditch, but you didn't to this guy over here? It's like, because we fucking wanted to, bitch. Like, what do you think, we're going to be fair? Fuck you.
So
You know,
as somebody,
I think
as
there's
a
value
person
in
who's
just continuing to point out that, like, the entire argument of, like, hey, how come they did that over there, but over there do that? Because they fucking hate you. Like, they want to kill you and imprison you. Like, and I don't know what else to tell you.
So
You know?
so the other aspect, so like kind of touching into the oath, man. So there's somebody had brought up, because I was, kind of was dipping into some conversations, and somebody was like, well, technically the oath ends with, following the orders of officers and the office of the president of the United States. And I said, well, go ahead
Lawful
and read that.
orders.
Yeah, but read that, read the oath again. And this is the problem that people have with the Second Amendment, is people don't read it appropriately. So they make this
Yeah.
weird connection between militia and the right to bear arms and yada yada, where they don't really realize that regulated militia is basically the normal common folk having basic understanding and function of their firearm. So the same thing with the oath is that if you read the oath, the foreign and domestic threats precede obeying officers and the president. Okay, so
and it
if
says lawful orders. So an unconstitutional order,
and that's a
unlawful.
big problem, because one thing. So my cousin reached out to me. She's she's one of those people who like to research a whole bunch of stuff, and she's done a really good job of putting out information about treatment for the pandemic and whatnot. And she has gone out of her way to research and kind of provide information, very unbiased, just putting stuff out in front of people, but with the mandates that have come down, she has kind of switched gears and focused on trying to help people find ways to protect themselves from the mandates. Well, some of the families that she had been talking to were military families, and she was telling me all this stuff about how they were being threatened that if they didn't get the vaccine, that they would get bonuses and all this money and stuff taken away from them and yada yada. And I was explaining to her, I'm like, look, this is a very common tactic that is used in the military, and it's a kind of a gray area when it comes to the UCMJ, that it's quote unquote lawful. But honestly, if enough people banded together and said, no, we're taking this to court, like, it's going to get thrown out. It's going to get thrown in the face, because it doesn't. I
mean, you already saw OSHA do that this week.
Yeah. And the same thing goes for the military. And I hate it so much, because we're seeing so many people in all areas, but especially with the military, people that are saying, like, man, like, I'm 2 years away from retirement and that pension and all these things. Wherever,
oh yeah.
Like, don't get me wrong. That's rough, man. You spent 18 years doing this, and
I get it.
This was your game plan, but people feel like they're lost, and whenever authority, especially when you've been trained to, comply with orders and just continue to move forward, and this is part of the mission, and yada yada. It's really hard to say, like, no, I'm not going to do this, and but I told her, I was like, the best thing that you can do for these people that you're dealing with is to tell them to find as many people as they can to band together and say, no, we're flipping this table over, and we're not going to do this, because we understand our actual rights. And people argue all the time, like, I've seen with the mandates, people argue like, well, you get vaccinated, go to school. Guess what? I know plenty of people I went to school with that didn't get vaccinated for one reason or other, and they still were in class with me. And I know plenty of people that serve in the military that have foregone certain vaccines for one reason or other, whether it's health related or belief related or what have you. So don't
if we make it hurt bad enough for them, they'll fight. Right. They'll give in.
Yeah. And the one problem is, because she, God love her, there's a little bit of naivety that a lot of people feel, they don't want to believe, they don't want to wake up and be completely exposed to what's going on all the time, right? We know this, and in the Matrix, they talk about, like, people can't wake up till they want to be woke up, and all this kind of stuff. And that really is the truth of it. And And she's like, I can't believe this is actually happening. And I'm like, it happens, and this is not the first time. Um, but the most important thing is that we stand together and we push back, because, like you said, the more pressure you put on it, the better. But I explained to her, I said, I can tell you, I've spoken with people who served in, the Gulf War. I've spoken with people that have, operated within the Iraqi freedom. I've spoke to people that were in the Vietnam War. I've ran the gambit with veterans. Okay, like I've been surrounded with them my whole life, and all these people will tell you horror stories and things. But the people that have the worst are the people that have been in the last 15 to 20 years, and that's because
Yeah.
the leadership, not the people necessarily that are boots on the ground, but the people that are leading them are the people that are making these crazy decisions and
Mm-hmm.
are just going, and they're playing politics. And we've
Yeah.
spoke about this privately
Well,
about
part of it is
situations,
the
but
the the
go ahead.
quality of the leadership is in decline, to be sure. Um, and I think too, as difficult as I think it might be for a lot of us to look at past wars and say they were conducted more humanely, um, I do think it's true. And I think maybe after Korea, maybe with Vietnam is where it really started to just fall off a cliff in terms of at least trying to have some kind of connection to fighting a war honorably. Where carpet bombing and it went on in World War II, and you could pick this apart, but it just seemed to me that and you could go back to World War One and Civil War even, but it just seems to me that it's being fought so brutally, and that's having an effect on soldiers now who are having to deal with this stuff and deal with the mental consequences of doing these things. Drone pilots having PTSD, it's funny to laugh about, but they probably do from blowing up kids because they're doing that shit, and they know what they're doing. But,
Dude, yeah, I mean, I've talked to people, and I mean, I know you've come across the folks that have explicitly told you, things that deeply bothered them, things that they can't escape
mm-hmm,
from. And, I've come across people specifically that have served in a quote unquote war on terror
mm-hmm,
that have told me things that I'm like, man, dude, like I'm surprised that you are, doing normal stuff. Okay.
yeah,
And I remember, um, I remember I don't know, probably 6 or 7 years ago, maybe, there was a guy that I knew through a friend of mine who he had his license taken away, and he rode a bike everywhere. And
mm,
I didn't really know. I knew that he was former military and stuff, but like I didn't really know his story. But dude, I sat down and talked with this guy, and I was like, dude, just you telling me what goes through your head on a regular basis makes me like, makes me cringe. And
yeah,
basically the dude had such rough, uh, you know, PTSD that driving on the road and seeing anything like a cardboard box on the side of the road or anything like that, like would cause him to pull over and stop
that'd
his
probably
car
do it.
because
Because
he
roadside
couldn't hit
bombs
anything.
were a real thing.
Yeah, dude. And he's like, but some of his stories got into a much deeper, darker place, and it was like the things that these people are going through and at what cost is insane. And I hate
Yeah,
it so much because um, I grew up with such a deep respect for the military and such a
yeah.
deep respect for
Well,
people that would
I mean,
serve.
there's
And then I
still
see
like
I see the
a
way that
kind
they're
of respect that I have for them. It's like they went out and they did a hard thing that they believed in, and their entire freaking society told them it was a good thing.
yeah, yeah,
It wasn't like you know they went out stealing cars where everybody's telling you your whole life, like don't steal,
Don't
wrong.
steal cars.
You know,
Yeah.
there's risk involved in stealing cars. You know, you could get killed doing it. But, you know, they don't have like Budweiser commercials and movies and music and TV and guidance counselors telling you like, good, good, good. You're just getting green lights everywhere if you're doing this stuff.
Yeah.
So it's
Right.
like, how much scorn are we supposed to heap on these people? It's like, you know, I mean, it took me 14 years to figure things out, and I mean, I'm kind of sharp, I guess, but you know, but it's like, you know, come on, like the guy's like 21, 22, and we're supposed to be like, well, fuck you because you didn't weren't reading Rothbard when you came out of the womb. Like, come on.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
I mean,
it's pretty silly.
It's funny you bring that up because it's an interesting phenomenon amongst humans, I guess, that, you know, you have all the people, all these gung ho, whatever, militarist type folks, whoever that, you know, every time that it's like, well, if you want to carry an AR-15, why don't you go over to war? And it's like, bro, all right, let's have a conversation. Like, this
I know.
doesn't
You know what
add
I
up.
always tell them? You know what I always tell them? I always tell them that would be a really irresponsible use of an AR-15.
Yeah.
Because all that's happening over there is unjustified murder. Like if you want to talk about using AR-15s, you know, and I know it's not an actual AR-15, it's M4, you know, whatever.
Right.
But you want to talk about irresponsible use of the military and the police are the kings of that. Like if you know, if they were truly honest about like, oh, you know, if you use it irresponsibly, you have it taken away. There wouldn't be an armed police department or sheriff's department in this entire country.
Oh yeah. Dude.
And they'd just be like, going to the Marine Corps, the Army, Navy, Air Force, be like, hand them in. No, you guys were idiots. So, but of course, that's not the goal. It has nothing to do with safety or responsibility. So,
yeah, I mean, it's just dead arguments. But it's just funny that I see people that do this, and a lot of times it's people that aren't even like former service members or whatever. But it's just the people like, if you want to do this, it's like, and I think it's even more hilarious whenever leftists argue for it, because those are the same people that you know, stereotypically would, you know, advocate against war. And it's like, all right, what do you want, bro? Like,
yeah.
Do you want people going over and doing this, or do you want people over here, you know, handling their shit? But
they're just idiots arguing in bad faith. They don't know.
Absolutely, dude.
You know,
but
if AOC or Bernie or Biden says something different, they'll just go right along with it. It doesn't matter. Like, intellectual consistency doesn't matter. Sticking to their principles doesn't matter to them at all, ever. So,
man, I'll tell you what. I mean, I'm looking at the situation now that, so, you know, we're past the Rittenhouse verdict, which is a positive. I think it's a huge win, and hopefully it empowers people to say, like, hey, you know what? We should be doing this. We should be out here peacefully maintaining order and saying, hey, you know what? You're not coming here. You're not going to burn down this building. But what I'm kind of trying to get at is that now we've had this one major case, and I think it's very important that we continue to focus on some of these other cases. I mean, we got the now we got the Ahmaud Arbery case that is up, which I think is super important because you know, people can make their arguments just as much as they made against Kyle against Arbery, as far as, you know, why was he there, or what was he doing, or who, you know, who was he in the past, and all this stuff. Like, they try to defame Kyle, and it's like, look, bro, you can't corner somebody like that and then shoot him dead. Like, that's not self-defense. That's not a direct.
When you go after them like that, when all you thought he was some dude that robbed you like a week ago, it's like you weren't even sure it was him, and it wasn't him.
And
then it sounds like they didn't even see him if he or when he trespassed onto that building site. Like, yeah. I haven't followed that one too closely, but those two
So
old boys seemed like they were definitely in the wrong.
I closely followed it whenever it first broke news. Obviously, the forefront has been the Rittenhouse case at this point. But I'm gonna switch gears and kind of look into the case as it unfolds. I know that I read yesterday, maybe it was early this morning, but they were, I guess, the goofballs that perpetrated that are up against that are being charged. They had motioned for a plea bargain or something like that. So I don't know where that all sits, but then beyond that, we also have another great case to focus on. Is the Ghislaine or however the hell you spell her name say her name, Maxwell, with the child trafficking, sex trafficking case. And dude, I'm telling you, man, like I'm looking around and so many people don't realize how much stuff is happening under everybody's nose. And I think that if you're going to pay attention to anything, you should really pay attention to the Maxwell case because, growing up in Louisville, Kentucky, the Kentucky Derby was a huge thing. But guess what the Kentucky Derby also is a huge thing for? Sex trafficking. There's tons of stuff like that that's going on all the time. It's a very, very big thing. There's a group of women that are former victims that have kind of formed in Louisville that work as kind of a halfway home type situation or wherever to help people escape from sex trafficking and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But they brought a lot of awareness to it in the last 5-6 years or so. Honestly, most people that live in the area and stuff would never even suspect it, but it happens, and it's happening right in your backyard during one of the most prestigious events in the world. So the Maxwell case sheds light on a whole different area of life that I think a lot of people don't even pay attention to. And Epstein didn't kill himself, and the more people recognize that and understand that and watch this case, I think the better, man. People just need to pay attention to
I'll
their
tell you what I
surroundings.
think. I'll tell you what I think the best value, or at least like two of the valuable things that came out of the Rittenhouse case, besides just a young man who's innocent being exonerated. One is inflaming the left again, because I don't think these people should ever get a second's rest. I think they should be subjected to torment constantly because they're not emotionally equipped for it, and they lash out and they make themselves look stupid, and they just keep embarrassing themselves. And so like anybody who, like, I don't know how you'd be this person now at this point in the country, but who's just kind of like on the fence or something is just, or even if you were like kind of center left, you'd be like, wow, like my side is insane. But the other value is in rooting out, so-called conservatives and libertarians who completely fumbled this for their own personal reasons or just personal weakness. I don't know what it is, but there were some libertarians and conservatives that really fumbled this case. And it doesn't mean like you have to come to the same conclusion as me or you're, a piece of shit or something, but coming to the wrong conclusions out of bad faith or just stupid arguments, or just because you're afraid of what Kyle Rittenhouse means in the popular image, as in when your community's on fire, you should go defend it. And I know it's going to be risky, but that's the right thing to do. And if you can't do that, at least give moral support to the people who are, and don't just like try to ride them down and tell them they're stupid. And I think, if we're talking about like the broader sort of value that the Rittenhouse verdict has brought, it has been that those people early on who wanted to drag Kyle Rittenhouse are now paying pretty hefty costs for that.
Oh yeah.
If in no other way than the loss of respect of people around them who now see them for who they are as just kind of little milk toast, little soft.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think it's good to root those people out because maybe someone like me or you or whoever, maybe we're sitting there on the fence, we don't know which way to go, and we see this guy who chooses the pussy way get dragged and insulted and losing the respect of his friends, and you see this guy over here who's choosing to be a man, being praised and having the respect of his friends, and maybe it'll help some people who are like, if they're on the fence and they don't know which way to go, they'll be like, oh, I should go be a man and not be a pussy.
Absolutely, man. And that's one of those things that I enjoy thoroughly whenever I see the strong prevail, and also see the foolish and weak fail, because through all this, we talked about briefly last week, talking about the backlash from the Nick Sandmann situation against the media, specifically CNN, that was basically setting the industry standard of the story, the narrative, and they ended up paying out big for that. And now that they've lost Trump as their golden egg, so to speak, to drive ratings and whatever, they're burying a hole for themselves, because more and more people, I see all kinds
so
of
they're kind of like the Fakertarians
on
when they
Twitter.
lost Liberty Hangout.
Oh yeah, dude. Like whenever these people, when these people lose, they lose epically, and they just don't know when to stop, and they continue to push. And these goofballs, like with CNN, with Brian Steller or whatever his goofball name is,
Stelter.
This dude, like whenever he comes out and he's trying to make his statements, or Don Lemon or whatever, like they are begging for attention. Like they just hope that praying somebody out there is still believing they're garbage. And I'm seeing more and more people that are just laughing at these people, like, and it brings me joy. Same thing with the Fakertarians, bro. Like more and more, they box
and they can't help but scuttle themselves.
Corners. Yeah, dude.
Oh yeah,
constantly.
They can't help but scuttle themselves, because here's their problem: is they only know one thing. So when it doesn't work, their only solution is to do it more. Yeah. It's like a kid telling a dumb joke and nobody laughs, and so they just tell it again, or they just change something, a tiny little thing about it, and tell it again.
Yeah.
And if you don't tell them, if you don't tell them to shut the fuck up, they're just gonna keep doing it.
Exactly.
Which
really,
and of course with adults, like Democrats and Fakertarians, like you can't tell them to shut the fuck up, and they'll just do it anyway. But they're like kids.
But it is very, it's kind of important at this stage that the adults in the situation do say shut the fuck up, because there's so many, the time's run out for all the people that want to make up the narrative and try to control the narrative. It's done. It's over.
Oh yeah.
Like you said,
they can't do it anymore.
The government's overplayed their hand. The left has overplayed their hand. People are realizing, people that are hardened Democrats, people that were lifelong blue folks, are now saying, this doesn't really jive.
Yeah.
And
not really what I'm all about.
The fact that is even on the table is insane. And now, but it's a positive. It's a white pill, and I'm thankful for it. I look forward to people coming to the light, like you said last week. Like, hey, come on in, brother. Like, it took you a while, but you're here. Give me a hug, man.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's
it's like we're such a small little group. And there's a few autistic types among us who are like, oh, you should have been good from the very beginning of birth. But for the most part, it's like, hey, dude, you're like 80-90% of the way. I was just talking to someone the other day, and he's like, well, I'm not a libertarian. But then he just talks about how he wants the government abolished, and he thinks like who was it? Adam Kokesh has like the best plan for America and all this stuff, and it's like I'm just like, shut the fuck up, get in here.
Yeah, bro. Like you know
like,
the way. You
like,
know the way. Don't play
get
games
out of
with
here.
me.
Like, I don't want to hear it. You're a libertarian. You're in. You're in the club. But I'm
Yeah,
not.
man.
Like, you're in.
And it's one of those things. It's funny to me because, like, I've said a million times to people that know me, like, I'm an anarchist first and libertarian second. Like, I'm part of the libertarian movement and the Mises Caucus in effort to try to spread the idea of liberty and increase it and really, empower folks to think in that way. But man, like, it's a downhill slope. I feel like once you hit that pinnacle or the threshold, it's all downhill. Because once you have seen beyond the veil, it's like you can't unsee it. So as much as
Yeah, oh,
you may
yeah.
try to
Yeah.
backpedal, you can't, bro. Like, you're done. You're in here. You're in here for the long
Yep.
haul, because everything from here on out you're gonna see and you're gonna question and say, what is going on? Like, how
Oh,
did this
yeah.
happen? And
Yeah. I tell people all
I've
the
tried to.
time I tell people all the time one of the worst things I ever did for my mental health was start studying economics, because
Oh, dude,
it's a huge red pill.
bro,
Just
all
getting
these
into
stories coming
incentive.
out, all these stories coming out lately where it's like nobody saw this inflation coming. It's like, guess who did?
Mm, there are a whole
Non-Keynesian, you
bunch
know
of
what I'm saying?
people
Like,
who saw it
yeah,
coming,
a
and you
whole
don't want to
bunch of
listen to
people.
them.
Yeah, yeah, all the people that you point at and laugh at and say, oh, yeah. No, guess what? We saw it coming. We've been forecasting all this stuff
We've been
for
screaming
the
it from the
last 2 years.
rafters. You're like, how did Noah know about
What?
this? Like,
Yeah,
bitch.
yeah. And it's funny because, like,
Honestly, I'll say this though. At this point, when it comes to inflation and all this other stuff, I'm sorry. Like, if you're not taking measures to protect yourself and you're relying on these people to protect you, it's like, dude, you deserve it. Like, I hate to say that, but it's like if you're
yeah,
not getting into precious metals or crypto or fucking ammo or whatever, just getting the fuck out of the dollar. If you're not doing that, and you're like, oh, that's just stupid. Like, fine. Like,
dude.
you're going
And
to deserve what happens to you.
so,
I'm done arguing with people about it. Like, I'm not going to argue like, well, no, here's why crypto is wonderful and all this. I'm like, crypto's awesome. You should get the fuck out of the dollar and get into crypto.
so,
They're like, well, but you did it. I'm like, fine, go be poor. I don't care.
so I remember growing up in Louisville, not too far from Fort Knox, and in the 007 movies and stuff, Fort Knox and the United
Yeah,
States gold and all this. You know, it's funny because growing up around Fort Knox, growing up in the Louisville area, and whenever 9/11 happened, they talked about moving the gold around because they were worried that Fort Knox was a target. And I remember back then, well before I was really involved in any kind of like libertarian theory or like studying economics, especially from like an Austrian or Chicago school point of view, like, and really understanding history and like the difference between the gold standard and what we have today. Even back then, I recall people talking like, why does it even matter that they move the gold? Like, none of that stuff even really has any kind of bearing on anything that happens.
yeah,
And
exactly.
that was kind of a local issue because obviously, we were close to it and it was one of those things that, you talk about or wherever, I guess. But now looking back at it, it makes me laugh hysterically whenever people talk about stuff like that. And, I get in arguments with people about Gaddafi and the 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 gold standard and stuff and whatever, and people flip out, bro. Like, people just don't have any kind of bearing or understanding, and they just like flail uncontrollably whenever you start
Oh
talking
yeah,
about stuff like that. And
yeah. As far as I'm
now
concerned, fine. Let them
it's
flail.
becoming more. Spike Cohen has done a really good job of any time that he is given the opportunity to talk about 1971 and explain, like, look at the graphs, guys. Like, you can see that this line goes this way and this line goes this way.
Yeah.
Yeah, those don't mesh. They don't work out. And
Nope.
the more that people can understand that and really look at just what's happened in the last 30 to 40 years, if you really take just a moment to look at it, like, you should click
Yeah.
and realize everything from that point forward is just a complete farce and a complete joke
Yeah.
and a complete manipulation of society. And the quicker that you realize that and you separate yourself, like you said, either by investing in ammo or precious metals or crypto, the better. Because
Yep.
even Hillary Clinton just recently was talking bad about Bitcoin and saying, like, it's going to destroy the dollar. It's like, you guys have destroyed the dollar, but the fact that you're afraid of it means that I need to
Bitcoin's a
buy more.
lifeboat.
So
So, yeah.
I,
Well, hey,
it
man,
just,
it's getting late here. I gotta be up early, so
hey, same here, man. I got
I
work
gotta
to
be
do.
getting to bed.
Hey,
So,
well, it's been a good chatting with you. I appreciate you coming on,
as
and
always,
we'll continue to do this more and rant and rave about
heck
all
yeah.
the hysteria. But take care of yourself out in Reno, man, and I'll talk to you soon.
Hey, will do. Talk to you later,
All right,
man.
all right, peace,
Bye.
brother. Well, guys, it looks like that's the end for the night. I'm out here in the wilderness. I'm glad that I haven't been eaten by a bobcat. I've been seeing a lot of crazy stuff come through here. It's kind of wild. Uh, Stuff that walks right past my driveway, catches on the camera, but uh, yeah. So it's been a good chat. I appreciate anybody who's taking a chance to listen. As always, I appreciate you tuning in to Who Touched the Thermostat, and we'll continue to be around and talk about popular issues and interview some interesting folks. Uh, Trying to get some shows planned out for the next few weeks going into the holidays, and hopefully we can get some interesting people, different perspectives, maybe a little bit of stretch from the norm, get away from some of the politics and stuff, try to get into some lighter topics. But until then, I appreciate you tuning in, and come back next time.